Excluded from politics, members of the Muslim Brotherhood are standing their ground. They demand the return of the deposed President Mohamed Morsi. So, what are the risks of alienating the Muslim Brotherhood, and what options does the group have left? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme in Doha. I'm Adrian Finigan. 2 weeks after Egypt's president was forced from office, his supporters remain defiant. This was the scene in Cairo's Nasser city on Friday. It's become the centre of protests against the military, where supporters of Mohamed Morsi are demanding that he be reinstated. The protests took place after Egypt's interim president addressed the nation for the first time since taking over. He promised to protect Egypt from anyone who wants to cause chaos or violence.
This
is an important time in Egypt's history. Some want it to be a path that leads to the unknown, but we want it to lead to a better life. Some want it to lead to chaos, while we want stability. Some want this juncture to lead to bloodshed and fear. We want it to lead to better human rights. We know all too well that those who want bloodshed raise false slogans and claims. They're driving the country to the very edge, the whole time thinking they're doing righteous work.
Well, Egypt's interim government has cracked down on the Muslim Brotherhood since Mohamed Morsi was forced out of office by what's being described as a military coup. TV channels known for supporting him were taken off-air minutes after he was deposed. More than 600 leaders and the supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood were rounded up and arrested. Rights groups say they were denied legal representation. Many have since been released, but leading members of the Brotherhood, including Kairat al-Shatta and Saad al-Qatatni, remain in police custody. And on the 8th of July, 51 Morsi supporters were killed outside a Republican Guard building. The Muslim Brotherhood accuses the military of instigating the attack, which the military denies. All right, let's bring in our guests now. From Cairo, we're joined by Khalil Anani, scholar of Middle East politics at the University of Durham. He's also the author of The Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Here in Doha, we've got Hassan Nafaa, professor of political science at Cairo University. And joining us via Skype from Cairo is Amr Darrag, member of the executive board of the Freedom and Justice Party. He's also a former cabinet minister under deposed President Mohamed Morsi. Amr Darrag, if we can start with you first of all, when is the Muslim Brotherhood and the Freedom and Justice Party going to accept that deposed President Mohamed Morsi is not going to be reinstated?
Never. It's as simple as that. We will never accept that our legitimate president is not a president any longer. I mean, this is, it's not actually just us. Anybody who is really keen on having a sustainable democratic process in Egypt must be interested in restoring the legitimate and the democratic process in Egypt. And this includes three pillars, actually, not just the president. We have the president, we have the constitution, and we have the Shura councils. And these are the three legitimate institutions resulting from democratic processes, direct, free elections by the Egyptian people that were ousted through a military coup. So this way, if we have this democratic path reinstated, we are willing to discuss anything and agree with our colleagues in the country to make sure that we have a stable and sustainable democracy in Egypt.
All right, so how do you counter the criticism that the Muslim Brotherhood is being unrealistic in its demands? The facts are the facts. What's happened has happened. You've got to deal with it.
Well, if you look at the people in the street right now, this is also part of reality. I mean, you have, I don't want to get into comparisons between numbers, but you have, if you will, at least half of the people in this country are not willing to accept that their democracy is being taken away from them. And this number is increasing every day. And this is part of the reality. And we are actually in a deadlock. If we continue like this, the protests will keep increasing, the demands of the people will be even more, and we'll be further away from stability. And this is the least thing we want to happen. What we would like to have is to restore the democratic path, and we can sit together without any intervention from anybody other than Egyptians, other than civilian Egyptians, to discuss our future. So the reality is that we have to have something that is accepted by everybody, not just by half of the people.
Hassan Nafaa in Doha, does the Muslim Brotherhood have a future in Egyptian politics?
Well, they could have a future. They were in power for a year. Unfortunately, they have not been able to run properly the country. They have alienated everybody else and marginalized even those who were ready to work with them. So now they are insisting to mobilize the street to force the release of Dr. Mohamed Morsi and bringing him back to power. I don't believe this is realistic. This will depend largely on the support of the so-called silent majority. I doubt very much that the silent majority will take the side of the Muslim Brothers in the coming weeks. It is the silent majority or the non-organized forces in Egypt who really were against the Muslim Brothers because they got nothing from the rule, during the rule of the Muslim Brothers. That's why I doubt very much that the Muslim Brothers will be able to force, unless they resort to force or violence. And if they do, I think it will be catastrophic for both the Muslim Brotherhood and the whole country.
All right, that's an element that we will explore a little later in the program. In the meantime, you say that the Muslim Brotherhood does still have a future in Egyptian politics if it comes to the table, but the military and the interim government at the moment seem intent on humiliating the Muslim Brotherhood. How can it enter the political process in good faith while people are being treated in the way that they are?
Well, I do believe that I do believe that if they do not insist that Mohamed Morsi come back to power, everything could be negotiable, including the participation in the government. But I think the perception, the prevailing perception right now is that the Muslim Brothers will take. Have to take everything or leave everything. So they have not been raised through a democratic process, and they don't have a democratic mind. So if they accept negotiations, I don't see any obstacles for that.
Khalil Anani in Cairo, what does the Muslim Brotherhood need to do to ensure its survival as a mainstream force in Egyptian politics?
Well, I think one of the main tools that is used by the Brotherhood is to maintain protesting in the street that can maintain unity and integration of the movement and try to get as much as support from the street. The problem, I think, now is it's beyond the Brotherhood now. It's about the future of democracy in Egypt. It's not a zero-sum game between the military and between the Brotherhood. I think both parties are unrealistic. On the one hand, the Brotherhood is trying to insist on the reinstating President Morsi, which is to some extent unrealistic, although what happened against Morsi was a very clear military coup with popular cover. On the other hand, the military believes that the Brotherhood can move back to the old days under Mubarak, that they can be repressed, can be hounded, and can be arrested without any reaction. I think both parties indeed are unrealistic in their way of doing politics now, and this is the danger on the future of democracy in Egypt.
You described the overthrow of President Morsi as a coup. How do you think the military has played this since that overthrow? Are they working to some sort of strategy, or are they improvising as the situation develops?
Well, I would say what happened on 30th of June was a convergence of different parties and interests came together. On the one hand, you had the old regime was trying to come back to life by any means. On the other hand, you had the military that felt insulted by the Brotherhood and by some of their leaders who, accused the military by very insulting charges. On the third hand, you have part of the revolutionary youth who were very frustrated from the situation here. So these parties came together and they played the game very well against President Morsi. What happened is that the military over the last 4 or 5 months was planning to such kind of thing, to try to find a pretext or a popular cover that can intervene and can get rid of Morsi. But this also should not, overlook the fact that President Morsi and the Brotherhood made many mistakes over the last year. They united the enemies. They create many foes and created many enemies, and they brought them together against them. So it's some kind of shared responsibility between the Brotherhood on the one hand and between the military on the other hand.
Amr Darrag, how do you respond to that? You're basically agents of your own downfall.
This is something that I don't think this is the time to argue about right now. What we need to argue about and discuss is our future. Let's try to describe exactly what happened. Even if I acknowledge with you that we did mistakes, and nobody is without mistakes, but I'm really surprised to hear from my...
Yep, we seem to have a problem with Amr Darrag's line there. We'll come back to him with that question in just a moment. In the meantime, let me throw it towards Hassan Nafaa here. It's beyond the Brotherhood now. We heard there from Khalil Anani. It's about the future of democracy.
Yes, it is true. It is about the future of democracy in Egypt, and the Egyptian people had became absolutely convinced that there will be real working democracy in Egypt with the Muslim brothers. They have a chance, a good one, and many people were ready to let them lead the process if they wanted to be partners, but they refused to be just partners. They wanted to be hegemon, and they want to not only even to lead, they wanted to be the only organized forces to lead the country, and I think this was refused. Also, I think there is another side which is very important. The people of Egypt discovered, unlikely what they have been expecting, that the Muslim Brothers have good professionals and they will be able to run the country in a professional way, and these expectations have not met also, and that's why I think they totally failed. And the military could not really move unless there has been very strong popular movement asking for anticipated presidential election. And that's what happened. I don't personally believe that the military is ready or really willing to gain back power or to rule directly the country. It is impossible in this in this state of mind within the Egyptian people. It is impossible for the military to run directly.
Mr. Darrag, if we can just go back to the question I was asking you there, I was putting it to you that the Muslim Brotherhood is basically the agents of its own demise here, the Freedom and Justice Party.
We have to acknowledge that any political power in the world is prone to make mistakes. But this does not justify overtoppling democratically elected governments through military coups. And I'm surprised that my very good friend, Dr. Hassan Nafaa, is saying that we are, the Muslim Brotherhoods are not democratic, while we have been respecting all the results of the elections all through the last 2 years. Unfortunately, the other political camp has been using the military through a military coup in order to get to power. So I'm not really sure who is democratic and who is not. And the other thing is that the issue is not really, to be perfectly understood, the issue is not really President Morsi or the Freedom and Justice Party or the Muslim Brotherhood. The real issue here is whether we are interested to maintain and preserve our democratic process in this country. And there is no way that we can continue under the umbrella of a military coup. And then we elect another president, then the people go out in the streets demanding for him to leave, and then the military makes another coup in favor of the other half of the people. So this will go on forever. The only sustainable way is to restore the democratic process. Within the constitution we do have the tools in order to change anything. The president, the parliament, even the constitution itself can be modified based on the mechanisms inserted.
Let's get a response to that then from Hassan Nafaa.
Well, I think what the Muslim Brothers did not really understand is that in a post-revolutionary era, you had to establish a new system to replace the former system, to establish a new democratic system to replace the despotic system that existed before. This has to be done with all those who participated in the revolution, but the Muslim Brothers thought it in terms only of majority and the minority. In the post-revolutionary era, you have to work together to have a consensus, at least to have a constitution that is not contested. And I was witness myself in the formulation of the constitution. As a matter of fact, the practices of the Muslim Brothers had nothing to do with democracy. They imposed a constitution. Of course, it is true that it was put to referendum, but you know, in all referendum, in all the history of Egypt, none of the referendum voted no, as a matter of fact. So what we need now is to establish a truly democratic system with the participation of all forces, all democratic forces, and if the Muslim Brothers is ready to join this process, they have that chance right now. So I will ask them very heartily to join the government, to join this third transitional era, to be partner in drawing the system and establishing this system. Otherwise, we will get into a real confrontation that will be negative for everybody.
Okay, I'll pass it back to Amr Darrag in just a moment, who I can see is shaking his head there. But first, the Muslim Brotherhood is still Egypt's most organized political movement, despite being officially banned for over 80 years. So what will its members do now? Well, one option is to continue as they are, with protests and sit-ins in the hope of forcing the government to meet their demands. But critics say that's unlikely to happen and argue that the Brotherhood should take part in political dialogue. But Brotherhood supporters say that it's hard to take part when your leaders are being rounded up and arrested. Another option could be to regroup and wait for a better opportunity. That's what Islamists did in Turkey when the military deposed them in 1997. And of course, finally, there's the violent option. The Muslim Brotherhood renounced violence long ago, but hardline Morsi supporters are calling for an uprising against the military. Khalil Anani, we touched on this a little earlier in the program, this perhaps deterioration into violent confrontation. To what extent will the strategy that the military is currently playing, and indeed the interim government, serve only to push the Muslim Brotherhood underground, back to a Mubarak era type situation? What are the dangers of that? If the Muslim Brotherhood doesn't enter the political process, could we see a breakdown in the situation and perhaps an Algerian type situation developing where factions begin waging a guerrilla war against the state?
Well, I think this can be likely if the Muslim Brotherhood did not find a place on the new political landscape that is taking place now in Egypt, and if the military insisted on using the current heavy-handed policy against them. This would put a lot of pressure on the leadership and can push some of young Brotherhood whether to join some extreme movements or to even split and divide from the movement. So this can be one scenario. On the other hand, you might find another division that can lead to revise of the Brotherhood ideology and discourse and ideas to make it more progressive and more moderate and more open, such as the case with Erdogan when they split from Arbakan in 1997. However, this would depend on two main things. The first one, to what extent the new regime and the military is willing to include genuinely and to engage the Muslim Brotherhood. What's happening now, unfortunately, is that, first of all, there is a growing fascist sentiment among many secular and liberal figures against the Brotherhood. The media is trying to demonize them and portray them as a terrorists, which is something very bad and can push the Brotherhood more to the wall and give them any other room to come back to life. On the other hand, it seems to me that there is an attempt from the old regime to come back to power aggressively and forcibly through the security forces. Now we are witnessing the return of the police state. And this would increase the pressure on not only on the Brotherhood, but on other Islamists. Now we have very fluid Islamist scene that even if you can control the Brotherhood, you cannot control the other Islamists who might turn violent and might protest and use violence against the state and society.
Amr Darrag, sooner or later, the Muslim Brotherhood is going to have to come to the negotiating table. What would it take to make that happen? You met with the EU's Foreign Policy Chief, Catherine Ashton, this week. Would perhaps you enter into negotiations brokered by a third party, such as the EU, for example?
But before I answer that, I would like to expand a little bit about what Mr. Anani said, and I totally agree with him, because it is not, again, it's not a question. I mean, the whole discussion is like centered towards the future of the Muslim Brotherhood. But this is really not the case. What we are having is a situation where, before these events, that we managed to convince almost all Islamists in Egypt to get into a completely democratic process. We convinced everybody that the right way in order to move forward is to engage in a democratic process through the ballot box, through the democratic practice. Now, what they are seeing, what they will be seeing, is that this will lead nowhere. They can never trust the ballot box anymore. Whether the Brotherhood, whether the Islamic Jama'ah, whether even the normal Islamists who are not really organized under any organization, or even normal Egyptians who are not even Islamists, but they will be convinced that democracy is not the way for Egypt. So this is very dangerous and very, very critical. And I'm really surprised that a liberal fact of the Egyptian society is supporting this. This is quite dangerous, and will get to everybody else.
Okay.
And regarding your question about mediation, again, in order to have any kind of negotiation, you have to start from an equal ground. Tell me, are we now standing on equal grounds with our top leader detained? We don't know where he is. We don't even know whether he's alive or not. All of our leaders are either in jail or are threatened to go to jail. Our people are killed every day in the streets. The bank accounts are frozen. TV channels are shut down. So how can we engage in, like Dr. Hassan is saying, that the door is open for inclusion in a government, or engaging in a political process with any kind of discussion? This is not an environment for any kind of discussion.
All right, we're rapidly running out of time. I want to put that then to Hassan Nafaa. Did what happened on July 3rd amount to a coup that sent a very strong message to the nation's Islamists? Why should we take part in the democratic political process in Egypt?
Because all other alternatives are very bad, either for the Muslim Brotherhood or for the whole country. The Muslim Brotherhood used to work as an underground force. For the first time in their history, they have their own political party, but the organization itself has not been dissolved. So we didn't know exactly who's taking the real decision, whether the president in the palace or Maktab al-Irshad, or the Shura Council in the Muslim Brotherhood. So that has been creating a lot of conflict, and I think the Muslim Brotherhood need a real revision of their history, of their mistakes, and they need to be partners in Egypt. But if they insist to be the only power that rule the country, I think they will be going to take the country to a disaster.
Gentlemen, I'm afraid that time once again has run away with us. We're going to have to end it there. Thank you to you all in Cairo. Khalil Anani, scholar of Middle East politics at the University of Durham, also the author of The Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Here in Doha, Hassan Nafaa, professor of political science at Cairo University, and via Skype from Cairo, Amr Darrag, member of the executive board of the Freedom and Justice Party, and also a cabinet minister under deposed President Mohamed Morsi. Thank you, gentlemen. And indeed, thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. Now, it's a contentious issue, as a lot of the issues we cover on this program often are. Please send us your feedback if you want to get involved. Email your thoughts to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again. Bye for now.